Hello and welcome to Varsity Blue. Alex Prasad and Andy Baena here, and it's the 2-7 edition of Varsity Blue. Andy, did you, in your wildest nightmares, imagine that here we would be in Week 9 or after Week 9, 2-7?
You know, the worst part of that statement is that it could be 2-10 in 3 weeks.
That is true, and the argument, of course, gets stronger every week. Let's take a look at the highlights of Michigan and Purdue. Purdue just goes wild on that veteran Michigan defense, the strength of the team. We'll see exactly why the two of us are so pessimistic. Here we go, starting things out in the second half. Michigan with a 28-21 lead to start the half. Not so fast. Siller to Sheets for the touchdown here. Ties it all at 28, and back and forth we go. Then Sheets getting it done on the ground as well. Purdue had 256 rushing yards, 35-28 Boilermakers. But Michigan coming right back. Brandon Miner ran in this game like a man possessed, and of course got hurt towards the end of the game. We don't quite know what his status will be. Here running off the left end, or just inside the left tackle there. Touchdown Michigan. They tie it back up at 35 with 12:19 to go. But this game went back and forth all day long, and Purdue just ended up having one too many scores from Michigan. Here, Siller, the third-string quarterback who was playing running back just a couple weeks ago, finds his man in the end zone. 41-35. They would make the extra point this time. Threet comes right back here, a 4th and 5. The game is on the line, and Daryl Stoneham with a huge catch. He also caught one for a touchdown earlier, really coming out party for Daryl Stoneham. And then Brandon Miner finishing it off, powering his way into the end zone. Michigan ties it at 42 with 1:20 left. This game's going to overtime. No way Purdue moves the ball down the field just in 3 or 4 plays, right? Wrong. Siller here, wide open man. You play prevent defense in in these late game situations, and then the cherry on top, hook and ladder, touchdown Purdue with just 27 seconds left. Purdue would miss the extra point, perhaps opening up an opportunity, but it didn't matter. Take a look again. Boubacar Sissoko playing man-to-man coverage there, let his man get inside of him, and Brandon Harrison was a little late on the help, and that little graphic there from friendly Big Ten Network says it all. First losing season since 1967. That was a Bump Elliott year. Ends Michigan's 33-year streak of bowl appearances. And the final stats, well, let's start with the good. Brandon Miner, 24 carries, 154 yards, 3 touchdowns. Michigan eclipses the 300 total yards mark for one of the, well, they've only done that once or twice. Michigan last in the Big Ten in both total defense and offense. Very disappointing. But then look at Purdue, 522 total yards. Siller, again, third-string quarterback, just recently converted to the position, 21 for 34, 266 yards, 3 touchdowns, and Andy, 37 minutes with the ball for the Boilermakers. What to you, Andy, was the biggest thing to take away from this game?
You know, the biggest thing I thought of was that it's just a shame that this season ended up this way, that this football team has come to this. However, it's not that it was totally unexpected or anything, but I guess we all just have to take it in stride and realize that this is something that most programs go through, and you know, these streaks are made and they're broken, and there's a reason why Michigan has had one of the longest bowl streaks in the nation. People kept falling in front of them. So I guess that's the optimistic point of view. I'm trying not to be pessimistic about these Wolverines, and I think that, you know, it's something we can try to move forward and have a rebuilding, you know, this is obviously rebuilding year already, but rebuild for the future, you know, the next couple of years.
And then, of course, the piece of advice or the fact that's always thrown out when you talk about how dismal the season could have been and how dismal it's becoming is Rich Rodriguez had similar records at West Virginia in his first year and at Tulane in his first year, and even his early Clemson teams struggled when he was offensive coordinator there. So perhaps there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Jury's still out on that one, though. We do know Michigan is sitting at 2-7 right now. Let's move on to the defensive side of the ball, Andy, and a very interesting decision by defensive coordinator Scott Schaefer to bust out the 3-3-5 stack defense here 9 or 10 weeks into the season.
You obviously, we talked earlier before the show. I'm kind of stealing your thunder here, but about the strength of our defense is clearly not in our secondary. It hasn't been for years now. We've had the same players on defense generally, and really, I don't think we can crucify Schaefer for this or anything, though. I mean, they're just trying to shake up the defense, trying to make things work. Trying to see what can happen if there's changes. If we're giving Rich Rod the benefit of the doubt, then obviously I think Scott Schaefer deserves it here as well. Maybe you should stay away from the 3-3-5, though.
Well, of course, Schaefer, defensive coordinator at Stanford last year, and then before that at Western Michigan. And to me, this is what was most curious about the decision is, right now at home, figure out, make your list very quickly. The top, 5 or 6 players on the Michigan defense.
And don't say Morgan Trent.
And don't say Morgan Trent. Will Johnson, Mike Martin, Brandon Graham, Terrence Taylor, Tim Jamison. I can make the argument that those are the 5 best players on this Michigan defense right now. And when you switch all defensive linemen, and when you switch that 3-3-5, you're taking those guys off the field and adding in, an inexperienced, man in the secondary and Sissoko, and you're putting more pressure on the linebackers, which I think it's hard to choose which has been the Achilles heel for this defense so far. But you're exposing those positions more and putting less of an emphasis on what I believe anyhow is the strength of the team, the defensive team anyhow, the defensive line. Let's move to a bright spot though, Andy. Let's talk about Brandon Miner. Complete and total resurgence this year for that guy. As the team spirals downward, Brandon Miner rises up. But what about Brandon Miner? I mean, he's gone off the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if you can call the Michigan State game exactly going off, only running for 55 yards, but he has averaged 109 yards over the past 3 games, which is very impressive for a guy that basically his entire career we've seen him, fumbling, messing up assignments, whether it be blocking or whatnot, and just showing that, he didn't have the poise to succeed, as a Michigan man. However, now after these past 3 games, I'm pretty excited, to see going into next year what can happen, especially, having McGuffey to spell him, and, or vice versa. I mean, we can see how it works out, how it shakes up, obviously. But I'm pretty excited for, the Michigan Wolverines heading into next year with Miner and with McGuffey, and it's something that we can be optimistic about, and we don't have to be so upset, even with a 2-10 record, possibly.
Possibly. We're going to talk about what the chances are that Michigan wins another game or perhaps wins out, right? A little bit later on in the show, trying to keep it optimistic here. But yeah, of course, Brandon Miner, the fumbling problems have been, we're present at the beginning of the year, not so much anymore, which is a great sign. And he's running with a purpose. That's really been the most amazing thing. I remember one run in particular against Penn State when Miner just bowled over the linebacker. I mean, just laid the guy out. And that's the type of running that we haven't seen since there's some guy in number 20. I don't know if you heard of him, Mike Hart or something like that. Was in the backfield for Michigan. Okay, but let's look forward now, Andy. First, what's left to play for this Michigan team? Of course, if they had won this past weekend against Purdue, there was still the slim chance that they could go 6-6 and perhaps make a bowl game. But now that that's out, what are you looking for Michigan to do or to improve on in this last few games of the season?
This is a young team. They have everything to play for. Football is a sport that you're lucky if you can play it. Do you know how many high school football players there are out there that wish they could still be playing this game? If these players give up, they don't deserve to be on the team. They don't deserve to be at Michigan. They don't deserve to be doing anything with this program. So therefore, I'm just looking for them to try to keep on improving, trying to show, that they can be Michigan Wolverines, that they can, make the plays, and, we'll see what happens with the rest of the season. But it's definitely something that I think they'll pull through. I don't know. What do you think about it, Alex?
Well, of course, there is a lot to play for, and just because this team is so young, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Of course, things to look for perhaps here in the next couple games. Sam McGuffey playing more in the slot. If Brandon Miner is going to be the man next year at running back, you may see McGuffey in that slot a little bit more than more than nothing, as he hasn't played there much so far this season, and also. How many more games, Andy, do you think that this Michigan team can win? In my opinion, I think they can squeeze out one more victory, of course. There's Minnesota this week, Northwestern at home, that home field advantage at the Big House, very, important part of this team. And then finally at Ohio State. I don't know about that Ohio State game, but I think this team can pull out at least one more victory.
Honestly, when I was writing up my notes for this show, I was thinking